Okay, so, boy, there's been a lot of news lately. So I picked some of the articles that I thought were interesting. Um, this is the number one crime, at least it was a year or two ago, the number one financial crime in on that stole the most money was romance scams from home users anyway. I think for businesses it's business email compromise, but this is pretty impressive. They nabbed this woman with $182 million romance scam. So this is a big one, happens to a lot of people. So, if you know somebody that's met somebody online and now they're in love and now that person is talking them into buying cryptocurrency or something, try to save them. It's a big scam. They're making a lot of money with it. So there's a review of the security of WebAssembly. I've heard of WebAssembly for quite a while. I've not played with it yet, but it's actually a little bit relevant to this class. So maybe before this class is over, I'll get to start using WebAssembly. Apparently you can write C code and compile it into some kind of assembly code that runs in your browser and therefore is, I guess, platform independent. So it seems to me like the end result would be sort of like Java going down to bytecode. But anyway, I've heard about it for a long time. It's a fun, interesting thing. I'd like to write a couple hands-on projects about it so we can get more familiar with it. If anybody's used it, let me know. I imagine it'd be a way to make much more powerful web pages, among other things. So I just saw this. This is an official USPS website, and they've suspended inbound parcels from China and Hong Kong. They're going to take letters, but no more parcels. And I was baffled by this at first, but now I think I understand it from something else I've heard. Temu, the Chinese website where you can buy really cheap things, has been, I've heard it works because they don't have to pay the tariffs. And that's probably what this is about. They're probably going to refuse to take any parcels because Trump just instituted a tariff on China. And therefore, those parcels that used to be exempt from the tariff, there used to be an exemption for small items, small price items, less than $800 or something. And now they're going to lift that exemption, so that's probably it. They're probably not going to let any more parcels come in unless they have some kind of proof that they paid the new tariff. That makes more sense. I was trying to figure out why they would block all the parcels. That's probably the reason. I was thinking it might be terrorism or something, but I think it's probably just a tariff. So this is pretty interesting and actually pretty relevant to this course. We're not going to go into this level of detail, but the processor itself, in this class we're going to do a lot about the machine code and the assembly code, but there's also something called a microcode in the processor. There's some sort of driver code in the processor that can be updated, and that way some flaws can be fixed. So, and now the microcode is supposed to be signed to make sure it is authentic, but they used a vulnerable hash function, AMD did, so Google researchers were able to forge microcode and modify the processor to make it run incorrectly, and in particular to always generate the random number 4. And apparently, another article I saw said this vulnerability leaked out by accident. And so they were forced to announce it, and the patches are not yet available for the AMD processors. So that's interesting. Of course, I don't think it's terribly dangerous because I think you have to have system-level access on the machine to install this stuff anyway. But anyway, it is a violation of the security policy of the processor itself. So, and the patch, by the way, involves a microcode update. So I guess once you put up the updated microcode, it will now be pickier about future microcode updates. That's the idea. We'll see how well that works. Very often, when people patch a vulnerability, they don't do a good job, and you just have to patch it again. We'll see if that happens this time. So Palantir is Peter Thiel's company. Peter Thiel is a billionaire. He's a very creepy, strange guy. He was one of the PayPal mafia, like a lot of the people, like Elon Musk and David Sachs, that are now ascending very high in our government. Elon Musk appears to be the effective president of the United States now. Palantir is their spy company that spies on everybody, collects data, and gives it to the U.S. military primarily. And they're pretty creepy. They're like the private CIA kind of. And so now they've explained the purpose of this is to power the West to its obvious innate superiority. So, just like Elon Musk has come out recently as just a complete open Nazi, the leader of Palantir's CEO is coming out as just a plain white supremacist and saying, we have a new manifest destiny. The white people in America should take over the world, is what I'm getting out of this. This is very much fascist stuff, and with Nazis running the U.S. explicitly, it is not surprising that these guys are crawling out from under their rocks and saying this stuff openly. It's been gradually growing ever since Trump got in before, and now it seems to be reaching an amazing level of open shame. We haven't yet got to the angry mobs attacking minorities, but I think we're not too far from that. I think the Proud Boys that Trump let out of prison and the Oath Keepers are his version of the Hitler Youth, and they will be activated to go burn down black churches or abortion clinics or synagogues or something before long if we continue to follow exactly along the timeline of the descent of Germany into Nazism in the 1930s, and we've been right on track. And so this is one of the Trump people sent the FBI a letter. Everybody has to respond to this letter by January 6th. It's a political loyalty test, and you'll be fired apparently if you don't obey it. Trump wants to prosecute all the FBI agents that investigated the January 6 rioters or any of his impeachments. He wants to prosecute and the members of the House and the Senate that voted against him for impeachment. He wants to prosecute TV comedians and news anchors that said anything he didn't like. And they're trying to do more of this. So this one here, they have to respond by 3 p.m. Monday, the 6th. Doesn't seem quite right. But anyway, they're apparently by yesterday, they had to reply to this survey explaining what role they played in the January 6th investigation, with the clear implication being that if you say the wrong thing, you'll be fired or punished in some way. And so that's pretty disturbing. This is typical of fascist regimes. They have a lot of loyalty purges where they go through, and that's why people who think they're safe are wrong. Like, the idea is they'll start by targeting small groups like transgender people or illegal immigrants, and they think most people will say, well, I'm not one of those, so I'm safe. Nobody is safe in a fascist regime. The whole point of a fascist regime is fear and paranoia, and so they'll constantly keep inventing a new group to be mad at until they come for you. There's a famous poem about this in the time of the Nazis, but that's how it works. They need everybody to be afraid, so nobody is safe. They will just constantly be blaming their problems on some group and hunting them down. Trump wants to make a sovereign wealth fund to buy TikTok. Now, some other nations have done this, nations that are very rich, like Norway. Norway has an incredible amount of money because they sell a lot of natural gas and they don't need it all. So they have a fund where the government invests in something and makes money and distributes it to the citizens. But America is a debtor nation. We make a lot of money, but we spend more than that. The government is constantly starved by Republican tax cuts and such. So the government's actually in huge amount of debt. But this would be perhaps a way to invest some government money in something that would make money. But the other side, of course, is then we would have the government owning the main source of news, which is very, very contradictory to American principles. Because TikTok is the main source of news for people under 25, and now it would be controlled by the U.S. government. Now, people have already been very upset about the fact that it's currently controlled by China, so that seems highly unwise to have a hostile nation sending who knows what propaganda to our people who believe it as news. And they forced the owner of Fox, Murdoch, had to become an American citizen because it is currently illegal for a major news source to be owned by a foreign national, which is not a bad rule. But it probably shouldn't be owned by our own government either. It ought to be, our news agencies ought to be independent, telling us the truth, not controlled by governments here or elsewhere. But we're rapidly moving away from that, as almost all the major news media have now paid Trump a bribe and bent the knee to him and made it clear that they're going to just do his bidding. It's pretty disturbing how rapidly we're collapsing into a fascist country. Anyway, I'm going to stop this news.